So good evening and welcome to the 2015 Darwin College Lectures, which this year are on the broad theme of development. And welcome to everyone here in the Lady Mitchell Hall, everyone in the overflow halls, and also the many thousands of people who watch these lectures later on because they're freely available on the web. Darwin College is 50 years old, founded as the first college in the University of Cambridge, which was exclusively for graduate students, and it was the first mixed college. From a small beginning, we are now amongst the largest colleges, with an alumni body that encompasses almost every subject and is spread right around the world. It's a very real example of very successful academic development. Now, the second lecture in this, the 30th series of weekly Darwin College lectures, is Dr. Katherine Granger. Katherine is one of Britain's most successful female rowers. She started rowing, as many of you probably here in the audience did, when she went to university, as an undergraduate at Edinburgh University. 4 years later, and with an LLB, she won the gold medal at the World Under-23 Championships in a coxless pair with Cambridge rower Francesca Zeno. Her rowing successes since then include 6 World Championship titles and medals in successive Olympic Games: silver in Sydney 2000, in Athens 2004, Beijing 2008, and then in London 2012, gold in the double sculls with Anna Watkins, a Newnham alumna. Through those years, she also studied for an MPhil in medical law and ethics at Glasgow, and a PhD in homicide at King's College London, for which was awarded to her last year, 2013. Amongst her numerous honours, she has an MBE and a CBE for services to sport, and she will be the next Chancellor of Oxford Brookes University. Now, tonight is a major sporting evening here in Cambridge, with packed halls here, and then, of course, later, across town, Manchester United are playing Cambridge United. Now, I'm just delighted that we can gain an insight into what is involved in the organisation and training necessary for athletes to succeed at the absolute top levels, and especially the commitment that's required from individuals. So I very warmly welcome Katherine Granger to speak on development of an athlete.
Thank you very much. Lovely welcome. I did feel it's very appropriate to come to Cambridge tonight. As has been said by the Master, it is a night for sport in Cambridge, and I got excited because I had some of my friends saying, oh, we hear Wayne Rooney and Robin van Persie are coming to Cambridge. Before I realised the match was on, I thought, they want to hear about the development of an athlete. That's really good, because not all footballers engage in that way. Apparently they're having a kick around later on, and I promise I'll be on time for those of you who want to get home in time to watch Cambridge University beating Manchester United. Good night. Have a few drinks on the way home, just in case. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, especially in a city that is just so well respected as far as universities go. I've spent most of my life at university. I finally finished my 3rd degree last year after the longest PhD possibly in history. I was just busy. I was distracted along the way, but I dragged it out a little bit too much. But also, obviously, a place that's renowned and respected for the world of rowing, which is clearly what my life has turned into, without meaning to be. I have rowed many, many times over the years with fellow women who have come from Cambridge. They all rowed for the Blue Boat, and I have to say that colour of blue you've chosen is really annoying to sit behind. It's having hours of that splash top in my face, it's worn me down. But I'm a big fan of Cambridge, so it's nice to be here. And I'm talking about, obviously, the Darwin lecture series, and it's I was having a little look. I don't know my Darwin very well, but obviously know the basics. And because he was a man who believed in natural selection, and I thought he would probably appreciate the way that rowing is run, where the weak do get killed off. I read something recently from him when he was saying, the way the savages are, the way that savages operate, then the weak ones get culled and the strong survive. Whereas the civilized man is different, and the civilized man try and protect the weak. And I thought that surely shows that rowing is not very civilized at all, because we just cull the weak. I didn't ever expect this to be my life and this to be my career. It has been the most rewarding thing I've ever done and never could have dreamed of doing. But I didn't start rowing until I went to university. And I went to university in Edinburgh to do law, based on the fact that, if I'm absolutely honest, I watched, a lot of you will be too young to know, I watched a lot of LA Law and other great legal dramas, and I felt that's what the law was. I wanted to wear great suits, big shoulder pads, and make great speeches about justice and save the world. And then I went and sat my first tax lecture, and then you realise it's not all like it is on telly. And it was at Edinburgh that I, by complete accident, fell into rowing. I'd never really done it before. I'd done it once when I grew up in Glasgow. But it wasn't anything my family did. It wasn't anything I knew much about. But I remember when I went to university, people said, whatever you do, just try things. University is the best time to go and experience, people and places and try new clubs. And I went to the Freshers' Fair and joined up to as much as I could. I still genuinely have my membership card for the juggling club. I think it's outrageous. It's still not an Olympic sport, but it probably will become one, the way things are going. So rowing was one of the clubs I didn't have any interest in. And I was going past the rowing stall, and I was with a friend. And for any of you who remember being a fresher or still freshers, you kind of don't want to be seen alone. It's that culling the weak person again. You can't be seen on your own, away from the herd, because then you look, you've got no friends, and you'll never get any friends. So I saw someone I recognised, so I went over to her and hung out, because then we're friends, stronger in a pack. And she went to speak to the rowing club. So I was hanging around on the sideline waiting for her. And then someone from the rowing club came over and said, "Do you want to hear about rowing?" And I said, "No." Strange sport. And this was back in, to be fair, it's back in the early 90s. And it wasn't massively known sort of, across the country or internationally at that point. And I just, I grew up next to a boy next door who rowed all the time, and his biggest thing about the sport was, "Oh yeah, you got to look at the blisters I've got, look at the calluses." Didn't work for me as a teenage girl, and I just didn't know anything about it. I wasn't really interested. I'd signed up to the juggling club and the abseiling club and the skiing and the climbing and the sailing and you name it. I was going to do all this outdoor stuff, and then she sort of said, "Oh, I think you'd be really interested. I think you should at least have a go." And I said, "No, too busy." And "Oh no, I think you could be really good." And I sound very shallow now. I started going, "Well, how good do you think I could?" And then she said, this is the clincher, she said, "Well, come along to the Thursday, we're having a meeting about it, you'll hear all about it, and then there's a free drink afterwards." I said, "Okay, yeah." So I went along and signed up, and didn't sign up, genuinely, it was a lecture theatre like this. I stood right at the back, behind the kind of fencing bit, and not really interested. And they said, "We're going to want 16 novice women." We went out fours at that point, 4 fours, 16 novice women, and 52 signed up that day. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do this, but I went to one of the 16. And it was then that I really realised how competitive I was. And I got into the 16, and sort of that's where my career began. But I started university and rowing at university because I got hooked because of the people who are lucky enough to be rowers here. The sport itself is quite addictive, but the people involved in that sport are so special and incredible, crazy, insane, wacky characters, but just brilliant people, really motivated, driven, eccentric and batty, yes, but but just wonderful people. And right from my university right up to the Olympic team, I have met person after person who are exceptional individuals. And that's what hooked me. That first year, the people absolutely hooked me. And then I fell in love with the sport itself. And talking about development of an athlete, it's a sport that you will continue to develop in. It's a sport that is so technical. From the outside, it doesn't look very technical. I get it. It just looks really hard work. And everyone thinks it's about your arms. Everyone goes, oh, you do rowing, big arms. It's really your legs. Hate to give it away. And it's something that I've now done. I started in 93, so it's over 20 years. And I'm still trying to perfect the stroke of rowing. It's a stroke you do over and over again. We do hundreds and thousands of times a day, and I still haven't got it right. And that's the attraction of the sport, because that you are constantly developing as a person, as an athlete, as a technical model, as a physical model, a psychological model. Everything you develop constantly every single day, and it's so hard. You get challenged every single day to do it. I'm just going to show you a video which basically gives away my whole story, but most of you probably know the ending anyway. But it was something that they put together after the London Olympics, and the BBC put together, and they showed it to Anna and I in our first live interview, and the day after we raced. And it's just a kind of, I'll go on to obviously talk about it, but it shows the development of my career and how it was seen from the outside, and how the public saw it, before I'll tell you about the details of how it was from the inside. So there's three reasons probably I want to show you that now. One is because I like it. And I haven't seen it yet today. And well, I suppose the main thing is because it's what people know. It's the end point. It's kind of was the story, but it is every athlete. I mean, no athlete is born successful in that way. No one is born with a gold medal, and the whole thing is a massive development, massive journey, with absolutely no guarantees. And there was no, although we were favourites going into that race, Anna and myself, there was no. In sport, you just can't guarantee anything, and that's why even Steve Redgrave was looking a little bit nervous. But it has been a massive journey, and it's a massive journey for me as an individual, but a massive journey for the sport as well, for the sport of rowing, but British sport as well in the last, say, the 12 years, say, between Sydney and the London Olympics, and even before that. Sydney Olympics was my first Olympics. I had watched, Olympics growing up, obviously. To me, Olympics was pretty much track and field. That's what a lot of people see mostly. I wasn't aware of the rowing. The 96 games were obviously the last ones. I was actually rowing during the 96 games. And I was representing Scotland in the home countries race. It was happening at Strathclyde Park up in Glasgow. And I know exactly the moment I was racing, the biggest race in my life to that point, because by chance, the moment we were racing was the same time that the Olympic final with Steve Redgrave and Matthew Pinson was being raced in Atlanta in the USA. And I only realised that because halfway down our race, I realised the commentary they were playing was live from Atlanta. Not our race. So you learn quickly where you are in the ranking in our sport. But in 96, the gold medal that Steve Redgrave and Matthew Pinson won was the only gold medal the whole British team won. We were 36th in the medal table with one gold medal. And it was seen as a pretty much huge disaster all round. And after that point, there was a huge amount of money put into British sport. There was funding came in from 97 onwards. And it did transform the sport. It transformed, we had, for the first time, the women's team had a professional full-time coach. Came in from 97 up to the Sydney Olympics. And I came into the team in 97, just by chance. So I hadn't known the world before, but I was training with women who had massive debt, had got overdrafts as well as part-time jobs. That was not a professional setup, had existed. And the idea was trying to professionalize things and get athletes who could be just training full-time and see how competitive they could be at that point. I came in, I was in a quad with four of us on the way into the Sydney Olympics, and I was so naive, and it was a lovely time, and I was kind of very ambitious and massively confident in the team I was in. But the team we'd never won any Olympic medal in women's rowing in the history of the Olympics. Never won any colour of Olympic medal. So we came into Sydney knowing that if one of our crews could break through that barrier, then we could start changing things. And when you're in that development stage, there's no clear path to follow. There's nothing that's gone before that's guaranteed it. We had the men's team who's been very successful, but the women's team just hadn't had consistent, sustained success. So everything we're doing was a little bit trial and error. And we came into Sydney, and the biggest thing for me in Sydney, the most sort of strongest memory of that whole time, was just how much it was a dream. It was just this dream that we cared so much about, we were so passionate about. We weren't basing it on kind of facts and figures and data and past results, because we didn't have those. The quad I raced in Sydney, we actually had an injury to one of the girls 12 weeks before the Olympic Games, so we had a new person came in, so we were untested. We went to the Olympic Games, we'd never raced before as a crew. Wouldn't recommend it. And I'm gonna get a little bit of practice in first. But the night before the final, we had this incredible meeting where we talked to each other about what that race would mean to us and what we were trying to do and why. And we really tapped into the emotional side of things and talked in a very open way that we'd probably never talked before about our motivations and our hopes and our dreams. And it absolutely united us in a way we hadn't been in the time leading up to it. And we went out to race in the morning of the Sydney final, just knowing that we had this opportunity. That's what all it was. It was every boat starts on the start line level. Doesn't care how many Olympics you've been to or how many medals you've won, everyone starts level, and everyone's got the full 2,000 metres to race. And it's what you do with that 2,000 metres. And we all came together and said, we will put everything out there on the line. We'll give everything to each other for that 2,000 metres. Doesn't matter what pain we'll go through, what we'll experience, we will give it to each other for this one race. Probably the only race we'd ever do together. And it was incredibly powerful. And remember us all talking about going into that dark tunnel that you get to in racing where everything hurts and everything wants you to stop, and knowing that we would stay in that tunnel until we came out into the lightness at the end. And I remember being I was the youngest and the newest in the boat, and I was terrified of letting people down. It was my kind of overriding fear. And I remember just thinking, just get through the first 200 metres, don't catch crab, and you'll be fine. That was my Olympic thought. And we came through, and it was the Ukraine were probably our biggest opposition to get a medal. And I remember most of the race we were ahead of the Ukraine, so I knew we were in medal contention. And we had this incredible detailed sort of structured race plan that you've discussed and planned and sorted and finalised and everything else leading up to it. And we just unfolded it bit by bit down the whole course, 250 metres at a time, just disciplined, unpacked it and put it on show and put it all out there. And then the last 500 metres, you hear the roar of the crowds, you know the finish line's coming, you know this is your moment, and we descended into 4 women screaming at each other in utter chaos. But it was just bursting passion. I don't even know what we were saying, but we burst across the line. I knew we were ahead of Ukraine. I knew we'd got our medal. Huge celebrations. And we came into the landing stage, and I was absolutely convinced we'd won this bronze medal. Hugs and everything else. And they said, we can't give you the medals yet. We can't do the ceremony because we've got a photo finish. So I was like, well, we've still got our medal. Obviously, the photo finish between the gold and silver. And they said, no, it's between silver and bronze, yourself and the Russians. And I was so in my tunnel, I hadn't even noticed the other crew. And I said, and my genuine reaction to that was, don't worry about the photo finish. We've won the Olympic medal. And it doesn't matter what colour they come in. And the irony is very strong now, because I do care what colour they come in now. But at the time, I genuinely, the medal was everything. The medal was the big thing. And that showed the development as well. I would have been happy with any colour on that day. I'll tell you how fast your expectations change though. Because they took 10 minutes, 11 minutes to decide that photo finish. It was genuinely the smallest margin they could tell between the two boats. And I'm starting off going, bronze, fantastic. Halfway through the wait, so 5 minutes, maximum 6 minutes later, I'm thinking, but silver would be nice. And just before they came to tell us, I thought, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed now with bronze. And they showed us the result. They literally just came out and opened a piece of paper, and we'd won the silver by 800ths of a second, which is about this much. I've got the photo finished, and it's quite hard to tell, but we're very clearly silver. One of the hardest questions I ever got asked, I went to do a school talk after that, and one of the kids said, did you feel sorry for the Russians? Now, how do you answer that to kids? I said, no, I don't. But I mean, obviously, I feel for them because they were upset, but I wasn't going to change the result for them. We won that silver. And the biggest change that happened at that point in stages of development in the women's rowing team specifically was, up until that point, it'd been a dream. It'd been a big hope and a dream to try and win an Olympic medal, but no one knew it was possible. When we won that medal, it turned people's mindset massively, because people stopped hoping. People knew Olympic medal success was possible for women that we trained side by side with in the gym, and by coaches we worked with, and by the setup we had. That was medal success. And everyone believed that they could now do it themselves. We spent 4 years between Sydney and Athens. Things like the English Institute of Sport was created. We suddenly had sort of medical backup scientific support we'd never had before. We had physios and doctors on site. We had physiologists who monitored our physical data day in, day out. So everything started getting even more professional. And we trained with a different mindset. We trained with the mindset that we're now here to win medals. We took a smaller team to the Athens Olympics. There was only 8 women rowers. 3 boat classes, a quad, a double and a pair. And everyone went there absolutely genuinely believing if they could get it right, they could get an Olympic medal. So Sydney was the first medal ever won in Olympic history. 4 years later in Athens, every single woman came back with an Olympic medal for women's rowing. All 8 won medals. Unbelievable turnaround. The only downside of that was it was 2 silvers and a bronze. And suddenly the colour does start mattering. And when you're operating on that level and sustained success, then it's the gold medal everyone is after. And the big thing they started doing after Athens, and it was the cycling team that first made it kind of public, is people started talking about what the margins are between those final steps, between bronze, well, onto the bronze to silver, silver to gold. And they talked about the differences you can make and the marginal gains you can make. And the idea is that if you can make a difference, it doesn't matter how big or small, a tiny difference in one element of your training, then you start adding that together between maybe 2 people in a boat, 4 people in a boat, 8 people in a boat. That starts to get a big gain. If you multiply that by all the different areas you could do it in, could you do it in the gym work? Could you do it on the rowing machine? Could you do it on the boat technically? Could you do it psychologically? Could you do it with nutrition? Could you do it with rest and recovery? Could you do it with all these different areas? Could you make marginal improvement in all those? And of course, everyone can. You start adding that together, that's when you start making the steps. And that became a big sort of theme after Athens. And the British Olympic Association, which take us to each Olympics, and put together this video after Athens, which we're going to show you. And it was the idea of all those tiny, minute differences will make a difference, because this is how sports are won and lost. So it was basically a really powerful way to capture exactly the margins in sport and how tight it is. And it was used quite a lot to inspire kind of athletes going on to Beijing about why every single session does matter and why everything you do makes a difference. And I went to a conference that one of the organizations was running, and they showed that video in the last scene of how do you want to be remembered. And someone came on and said, because of course, nobody remembers the silver medalists. Katherine, and yeah. And I'd have to go and go, so I've got 2 silvers, and but it's harsh but fair. It is that we're talking about that Darwinian theory of when you get to that elite level of performance, it is pretty ruthless, and any weakness has to be sort of cut out. And we came together as a squad after Athens. You know, absolutely acknowledging amazing success, but all agreed that actually to really shake things up, we had to now go for gold. And we felt we had the right people and the right setup, and things had progressed enough in our sport that was realistic now. And what was great was quite a big squad. And we said, realistically, not everyone in this squad is going to be the one to win the Olympic gold, but everyone can still play a very key role in that. You need a bigger squad than the actual people that will go on and win it, and everyone needs to be signed up for that same mission. So we had that amazing, we still had the heart and soul and that passion that Sydney had delivered. We had the utter belief now that Athens had created. And then the run up to Beijing was about basically leaving no stone unturned, making everything matter, making everything count. And we involved, we worked with psychologists quite a lot. We talked far more about roles within the boat, and what we were all, on a different level of understanding. How can we develop as athletes individually, but also as a team? Because there's always this kind of question of how do you get a successful team? What is the X factor that makes some teams work perfectly and some just fall apart? A lot of teams work well away from the pressure, but when you put under the pressure of something like Olympic Games or World Cup final or something like that, a lot of teams then crack. And if there's any weakness in a team under the massive pressure, that's when you'll see it. And sometimes that's the first time you'll see it, and it's too late by then. So in Beijing, we tried to do this incredible sort of honesty about, what we felt about each other and what we felt about the boat and what was important to us. And we had these, these sessions which were really positive. We took one person at a time in the team, and everyone said something about them, that something that inspired you about them, or what you loved about them, or what you were in awe about them. And we sort of took it in turns to go around, and it was all really good, confident stuff. Some of it's stuff you don't want to hear. Some of it's not all great, but it's the openness and the honesty we had to have leading up to Beijing. And we had this ongoing run. I was back in the quad at that point. We won. There was 3 World Championships between the 2 Olympics, and we won each World Championship. So we won 2005, 2006, and 2007. So we were triple world champions coming into the Beijing Olympics. We'd never had success on that consistent level in British women's rowing, and everything was then geared up for the final step, was the Olympic gold. We had the perfect preparation. We had a year where everyone was fit and healthy. Selection was incredibly competitive, which is what you want. As an athlete, it's very uncomfortable, but as a coach and when you can step back, you want it to be competitive. You want it to be hard to get into that top boat. And we, in the Beijing Olympic year, we knew for a long time coming into it, that the biggest threat in a lot of sports was going to be China as a sporting nation itself. And China had put out a statement very early on saying for the first time in history they would top the medal table. They'd never beaten the USA. They'd never topped the medal table. And as a home nation, and China had come under a lot of criticism if they should be hosting the Olympic Games. Human rights questions had been asked, and a lot of people disagreed with it going to China. And China's response is, we'll put on the biggest and the best show that you've ever seen. We'll prove to the world how good we are and what a show we can do. And we'll do it showcasing the city, but also showcasing the athletes. And in the last sort of year leading up to the Beijing Olympics, we suddenly saw their athletes coming out in all different events, absolutely exceptional performances. And they had sort of very specifically targeted certain events, certain sports, because they knew the number of gold medals they would have to win, realistically, to top the medal table. Unfortunately, rowing was one of the sports they targeted. And so in the 2008 year, even as reigning world champions, we knew it wasn't going to be simple, and it never is. Just because you've got the past results, no one gives you the next one. So we came into the Beijing year as favourites at the beginning of the year. We raced a World Cup season before the Olympics. We won some of the races, but the Chinese crew beat us in some of the races. So probably coming into the Beijing Olympics itself, we were equal favourites. We were confident in what we could do, but we knew we'd have to bring our absolutely best to that event. We raced our heat confidently. We were in separate sides of the draw from China. We broke the Olympic record. We were the fastest women's quad in history at the Olympic Games until the Chinese raced their heat and beat it by more. Yeah, I wasn't laughing at that point. And then we came to the final. We knew based off the times and the performances, realistically, it was going to be a two-boat final, us and the Chinese. The way we'd won the year before had been, we had a very, very, very fast start, got ahead of everyone and kept going, and basically getting to a point where nobody could attack us. There was just too much of a gap for anyone to attack. And we decided to race the same style because it'd been our most successful year. We wanted to race in a similar way. Now there's a theory of, it's used mainly in business, but a bit of evolution as well. There's different phases, there's different cycles. So everything's obviously in a circular way. So you have your sort of learning phase, which is when, usually comes off the back of maybe a disappointment or something that's happened. You learn, you have to learn to get better. And you're trying things and improving the whole time. And then you have the growth phase where you have now learnt it and then you develop it, you bed it in, you get confident and the praise starts coming. And then you have the decline phase where usually that starts not working and you have to start again. And the key thing is, that people say, is that when you're still in the growth phase, that's when you move on to another phase again. So you never get into decline. You actually change and start learning and growing and learning and growing, and you never hit the decline. So there's an argument that with hindsight now, having done our learning through the earlier Olympics, we did our growth phase probably in the 2005, 2006, 2007 time. At that point, we should have changed again and done different tactics. But we stuck with our same one. And the risk with that was, it was the fastest way we knew how to race, but it also was the fastest people knew how we were going to race, realistically. And we didn't do the adaptation thing. And in the Olympic final, we had a very, very fast start. We came out ahead of everyone. We pushed away again, got a nice gap, and it was going exactly according to plan. 2,000 metre race, the first 1,000, we had a good margin. The third 500, everyone starts closing up. And then the last 500 metres, you get in those amazing crowds again, deafening roars. Chinese crowds were sensational, drums going, everything was happening. And the Chinese crew at that point started a sprint to the line that we had never seen. We'd never seen them do and didn't know they could do. Obviously, we respond. You can see it. Rowing, you're looking behind you the whole time. We knew the threat was going to come at some point. It came then. We responded, but we couldn't match their speed. They went again. We tried to respond again. At this point, the line's coming closer and closer, and they're drawing level with us, and we're nip and tuck the whole way. The crowd is deafening around us. We're still going through everything we can do. They start pulling away. We're about to run out of lake, and we cross the line a second behind the Chinese crew. And it was absolutely devastating. We were all just crushed in an instant. It is all your hopes and dreams gone, absolutely instantaneously. No second chance, no kind of back to start and let's try again. I almost asked, but you're just left. It was like, it's like being hit by a train of just, that's it over. That's it. That's everything we've worked for 4 years in this gold mission. And we were the crew flying the flag for the whole team. We didn't get it right. And the one race that it matters, we didn't get it right. And I remember we came into the landing stage and John Inverdale, who's working for the BBC, and Steve Redgrave were doing the interviews. And I genuinely remember their look of utter horror. They had these 4 women in tears coming towards them. And no one knew what to say, and no one wanted to speak, and no one knew what to do. And I was going to say Steve understands, but he doesn't. He's won everything he's done. So, and there was nothing to be said. And I got asked. I was first, and they sort of, how was that, or whatever. And I said something like, "No, always the bridesmaid, never the bride." And I don't know where that came from. And then we went on and had to get our medals, and obviously next to an incredibly ecstatic Chinese crew in front of their home crowd. And one of the hardest things in the aftermath of that, and it's why you hear athletes saying it, you heard it a lot in London, athletes who feel they've got a disappointing result, increasingly now apologise for it. And I know we felt that we had let people down. We felt I felt let the teammates down, our coach down, all these incredible support staff that work with us day in, day out. You're representing the country, you're representing Great Britain, you've let down the wider Team GB, you've let down the country. You genuinely feel everyone who's ever done anything to try and help you. I had friends who flew out to Beijing at huge expense. And I just felt I'd let everyone down, and it's quite traumatic, and nothing anyone can say fixes it. And no one ever said, well, that was such a disappointment. But it's all you feel. And we went to a dinner, and there was a woman there who had done this thing on a website about, I'm going to meet some of the Olympic athletes. If you've got any questions for any of them, let me know, and I'll put them forward, and we'll get some conversations going online or whatever. All anonymous, lovely. And the first question I got given, it was on a piece of paper, was, can you ask the women's quad what it feels like to have wasted 4 years of their lives? And I think the next one was, can you ask the women's quad how dare they show emotion on the podium and show upset? And it shows you how far sport developed even in 4 years, because I don't believe any of those even thoughts would have been raised after London, when you saw people so upset after those medals. But for some reason, I don't know, in that time, 2008, people just, I don't know what makes people ask these things. But it was such a sensitive time. I remember reading it and then thinking, God, is that what I've done? Have I wasted 4 years of my life getting that? And I took a bit of time off, and I made the decision whether or not I wanted to continue on to London. And I really did agonise over it. Obviously decided to go on, which was obviously the right decision, but at the time it felt like a big decision. And I remember when I knew I was okay, because I came back and I found that piece of paper again. I remember, rather than being really upset and hurt by it, I was actually really angry by it when I saw it months later. And I thought, I don't know who wrote that or what they've done in their 4 years, but I've been a world champion 3 times, and I'm an Olympic medalist, and I don't think that's a waste of my life. And I think at that point I knew I was going to be okay, because when that fight spirit comes back, and it was game on. And then we had the run up to London, and this also shows how not just as athletes we developed, but as a sporting nation we developed, and how the Olympics had developed. It was London was going to be the only city to have hosted the Olympic Games 3 times. So 1908, 1948, and then 2012. In 1908, there were, 22 nations competed. There were 2008 athletes. 37 of them were women. 37 women athletes out of 2008, back in 1908. In 1948, the Olympics was the first Olympics that happened since the Second World War. So 1936 had been the last Olympics before the war, the Berlin Olympics. Then 1948 would be the London Olympics. So it was a kind of austerity Olympics. Britain pretty much won everything. And it hadn't come back. By that point, we had 4 more countries, 4 more sports involved. But 2012 was always going to be massively different. Sport in those 50 years, 60 years had utterly developed in a way no one had predicted. As an Olympic movement, rather than having 2,000 athletes, we had 10,700 athletes in London. Almost half of them were women. Almost half were women. We're still a little bit short. It was the women's sport had developed so much that with boxing being introduced, women's boxing, it was the first time a women's representative would be in every single sport. And because Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Brunei had entered female athletes, it was the first Olympics that every single nation sent a female competitor as well. So women's sport had moved on, the world of sport had moved on. And as British athletes, there was this whole different expectation now of success. People expected gold medals every day. You're a greedy bunch, you lot. Seriously. And I was in a double at this point with Anna Watkins, ex-Cambridge girl, and we had been together for 3 years at that point. We'd won every race we'd ever done together. So there was this huge kind of, and now you shall now deliver the Olympic gold. Ta-da! And obviously, I knew it wasn't that simple, but we were just a fantastic combination. We loved what we did. We loved it. We loved training every single day. Our boat was just, it was a gift. It was fast, it was easy, it was comfortable. We had amazing communication. But we also wanted to make sure, we wanted to leave there'd be no chance. There'd be no chance anyone could beat us when that day came. We wanted to make sure that there's no guarantees, as I said before, but you can eliminate as much as you can. You can eliminate all the chance that you can. And we developed so much that we had amazing experts in the wings. Like I said, the sports science, sports medicine backup. We were in the shape of our lives. We asked all our greater kind of support team what they could bring to us. We wanted them to be part of this gold medal attempt. And we asked them all to bring in their gold medal standard to see if we could raise everything we did. We looked at, you name it, we looked at it to see if it could be the top quality. And in the 3 years we had together, we probably spread the net widest at the beginning of those 3 years and looked at all new projects and new designs and new things we could do with the boat and get the developments in that way. And as it came closer and closer to the Olympic Games itself, we narrowed that down and we didn't want any extra distractions and we cut away anything that wasn't absolutely essential until we got to the Olympics, and it was probably the clearest and simplest crew I've ever been in. It was very obvious what we had to do individually, together. We knew how to race and we knew how we would deliver that race. And the biggest thing we had to make it was that simple, because when the Olympic final comes around, doesn't matter how many times you've done it, it's a pretty enormous moment in your life and it's quite terrifying. And you can't control your thoughts particularly. And what we hadn't predicted as well is we had no idea of the scale of the public support that we would get. We had in the lead up to 2012, it's easy now to go how great it all was, but there was a huge doubt when the bid was first won back in 2005 if we should even host the Olympic Games, because it's very expensive and, you know, we're in a recession and is it sport and is it going to be worth it? And there was a lot of people who didn't know if the Olympic Games should be coming to Britain. Everyone assumed Paris would get it anyway, and then it came to Britain. It was a bit of a shock, and we better do this thing now. And I still have newspapers the morning of the Olympic Games, the morning of the opening ceremony, where the headlines were, well, London's not going to cope with the influx of people. Just won't cope. Transport is certainly not going to cope. Well, the weather's really bad. The weather's going to rain, and that's going to be a disaster. And then the last minute, the security collapsed. Remember that? We'd no security. Everyone's going to die. It was just going to be... You know what the British tabloids are like? Oh, no. Here we go. And then, if people remember watching that opening ceremony, and it started, and they'd kept it a massive secret what would happen in the opening ceremony. Massive secret. And they said, right, well, the only thing we're going to release information about, we're going to send out, it's going to start, there'll be a field. And there'll be some sheep. And there'll be a tree. And the tree will be real. And that's all we heard. And we all were going, oh, it's a bit too British, isn't it? And everyone remembers the Beijing Olympic opening ceremony, 2008 drummers, perfect synchronicity, 208 drummers drumming, 208 beats. At 8's their lucky number in China. 8 minutes past 8 on the 8th of the 8th, 2008. And we've got a tree. There were some nerves, let's just say. Anyway, the opening ceremony started, and I still remember, in fact, I've got to go back and watch my DVD again, but I remember us watching this green and pleasant field. It was all lovely, and there were milkmaids running around. It was all very nice. And then somehow in front of your eyes, it transformed into these towering, sort of massive things of industry, and they were welding things, and it was all changed, and there was... And they were building, they're building something and it's glowing, and they've made a ring, they made a ring, that's amazing, and it's going up in the air, and they've made 5, and it's the Olympic rings, and by then, as an athlete, you're just gone. And then we had Mary Poppins, and we had the NHS, and we had Mr. Bean, and then when James Bond meets the Queen, and the way they filmed it with the the Queen was filmed from behind initially, and everyone watching went, oh, do you think it's Helen Mirren, or do you think it's Judi Dench? And then turns around and it's the Queen! And then she jumps out of a helicopter. She did. And then you just think, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. And then overnight, every single paper the next day said greatest show on earth, and was just like, here we go. Then everyone wants medals. Now we want the gold. And then the next day was Mark Cavendish in the road race. Guaranteed gold medal. Mark Cavendish, one of our best sprint cyclists ever seen. He had, in his team of 5 in that race, 4 of them had won stages in the Tour de France 2 weeks earlier. Nailed on gold. Until they came 22nd. And suddenly, people realised this was not going to be easy. That we can put on a great show, and we can be the home nation, and we can have all the support in the world. Gold medals are so hard to come by. And because you become an even bigger target in your home ground. So the first gold medal didn't come till the Wednesday of the first week. And then it fell in. Then it was the gold rush. And Anna and I raced on the Friday. And we went up to the morning of our final. And the crowds were the strongest memory of the Olympics for us, with the racing part. The crowds are unlike anything I have ever witnessed or ever seen or ever heard, and ever will again. And one of the things I get asked the most about London is, those crowds, could you actually hear them though when you're racing? Because obviously that tunnel vision, really focus. What I would love to do is just put any one of you into that cauldron. You don't just hear it, you feel that noise as a physical reaction. We were racing the 2,000 metres of the course. There are things that happen that will never happen again in my rowing career, because at the start line, you are 2,000 metres away from the crowd. When they called us the 6 lanes, they called each nation one by one. When they announced our names for Great Britain, we heard a noise that we didn't know what it was. Until later we found out that was the crowd at the finish line, cheering. So 2,000 metres away, we heard the roar of the crowd. You start racing, and in Olympic racing, they block 100 metres from the start so that nobody can get into that first 100 metres. So it is pin drop quiet. It's terrifying, and all you hear is your heart pumping, and you're hoping the opposition doesn't hear it. And we were just now, keep it simple, keep it clear, we know what we're doing. The race started, first 100 metres, exactly as we wanted, we're in that locked in of what we need to do. 100 metres in, we start to hear people in the bank, because they've opened up the full length of the course. So some people have walked all the way up to the start. So we start hearing voices then. We get to 500 metres gone, we're starting to pull out, we're leading, and we can hear more people in the bank. By 1,000 metres, there's so many people that it's like a normal finish line for us. It's really quite loud. 750 metres to go, thankfully we're still leading. It starts to get really quite, like, interfering noise. Like, can't really hear what's going on now in our boat. 500 metres to go, you then hit the actual stadiums. We haven't hit the stands yet. These are just people on the bank so far. We then hit where the stands are, and the noise goes insane. There was metal stands, people were stamping on their feet and roaring, and the whole thing, and the thing why the rowing was known as this roar, was so insane, because it's built obviously either side of the water. The noise drops down in the water and gets magnified by the water. So this sound is getting louder and louder. It had an effect that I've never seen before, where it was causing vibrations in the water. So the boat is reacting to the crowd. Anna, who sits this far behind me, is shouting at the top of her voice. I have no idea what she's saying. I think go was probably it. Pretty sure that's what she was doing. If you watch the bit of the video again, you see her, she gives a little bit of a smile, because she knows we're going to win. I still look like I'm going to kill someone, because you never know until you cross the line. And then the most amazing thing for me, when we crossed the line, it was the sound was getting louder and louder and louder, and I couldn't, my head was going to explode. And we crossed the line, and as we crossed the line, the crowd couldn't have gone any louder. It was already at maximum noise. But what changed was the tone of it. So it went from this, come on, roar, to a massive celebration noise as we crossed the line first, and it flashed up, Great Britain Olympic champions. And it was genuinely the most amazing moment of my life. And I remember people saying to me, what was your emotion? Because athletes who win, who have the expectation that they should win, and Sebco said this, and Chris Hoy said this, and the girls who won the rowing 2 days before us said this. The first emotion you'll have is relief, because thank God you've just done it, and then you can celebrate it. And I remember thinking, I don't want that to be my first emotion, because relief is a bit, really? But obviously you don't get to choose your Olympic emotion. But I can honestly say the moment I crossed that line, it was utter joy. It was pure joy. Then I had relief. I think my mum had it the other way around. I think she definitely had relief first. And then what was amazing was how it got enhanced every single day after that. We kept meeting people, and people who, not just by Anna and myself, but by the whole Olympic team, had been inspired and moved and touched and enriched. And we just thought we were part of something so special. We were part of something so special that, if we're talking about development, as an individual, as a person, I think you start off, especially if you choose sport as your career, some people think it's quite a selfish thing, and it's quite a, single-minded, obsessive thing to do. What developed for me was how it can broaden and reach so many people and touch so many people and enrich people's lives. I think what we did as a nation was phenomenal, and we made sport accessible, and it re-inspired people. And the idea was to inspire a generation, and by that everyone meant the new generation, the young generation. But I was stopped by a guy who was in his early 80s who said to me, "Dear, you've not just inspired the new generation, you've inspired every generation in this country." And you just think there was something very special happened that summer, and that spirit will hopefully live on beyond all of us. And to have been a little part of that, when I went to university to become a big-shouldered lawyer, and I left trying to make a boat go backwards. It's not the development I thought that would happen in my life, but for me, it's just taught me amazing things about what can happen if you have a vision and if you have a dream and you have a belief in it, and you will pull together an extraordinary group of people who will take things on and rise to those challenges and learn from mistakes. And one of the big things for me is development is not. Sometimes it's painful, and it needs to go through disappointment and failure to really move on to the next level. And it really taught me not to be afraid of that failure, because it's just a massive, massive learning process. And then sometimes you get an opportunity along that development phase to really make a leap and to make a stand, and you've got to grab those moments. And to me, I think everyone else thought, not just me, that was the end point. That was the natural end point in my life, my career. And I kind of took 2 years to calm down from London, really, to be honest. There was a lot of parties to go to. And then I had a momentous decision to make last year. And I made the decision to get back in a boat. And I'm back training now, with the Rio Olympics in mind, which was quite a shock to my mum. And a lot of people have understood why, and a lot of people haven't. And a couple of national stories in the press said it was a huge mistake. Try and go back, because when you've got something that's so perfect, a career that's so perfect, and an end point that's so obvious, I could never top it, I could never beat it. Why would I ever try and go beyond it? And all I can say is that there was something David Brailsford said recently, the cycling performance director, and he was saying sport isn't about an end point and about a result. It is a journey, and it's a journey of development. And it's about learning more about yourself and about what you can do and what you can do with other people. And it's up to you at what point you want to end that. It's not for other people to say, or because of an age thing, or because of anything. It's an ongoing journey. And for me, it's been the most rewarding, challenging, satisfying, enriching journey possible. And I've got a chance to continue on that journey a little bit longer. I firmly believe it's possible to do things that I never thought I would before. And I thought, it's something I love more than anything else in the world. Why wouldn't I do it? And I'm not going to be told by other people who have never stood in my shoes that it's the wrong thing to do. So, of course, it's a risk. I might be in tears again in 2 more years' time. Who knows? But it's, if you're not willing to stand up and take a chance on what you do and find out more about yourself, then I just think, what's life for? We've got one chance at it. And you've got to make the most of what you got and why you're here, and do what you love and love what you do, and hopefully make a difference in some way. And weird, I get to do it in a boat. And I'm going to keep doing that as long as I can, as successfully as I can. And if all goes well, I'll come back and tell you about the next stage of my development. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We're all riveted. So 2 millennia ago, mens sana in corpore sano, Juvenal's advice was to pray for a healthy mind in a healthy body and a brave heart that has no fear of death. That was pretty much the Victorians' ideal too. And sometimes today I guess we forget, although we're reminded now, how much good sport has brought. And here we are in Cambridge, and if you think about Cambridge's many contributions to human development worldwide, we can probably place the Cambridge Rules of Association Football, Parker's piece, very high on that list. I mean, isn't a World Cup better than a World War? Here in the colleges, the way that a quantum physicist might meet a fine arts specialist might very often be in the sweaty end of an 8 in a losing boat in the bottom division of the Lent bumps. Cold, wet, miserable, exhausted, but definitely bonding. And the development of Cambridge as a university must owe enormously to the social fabric woven by our sports. It's not just the playing fields of Eton that builds societies. So, Katherine, your achievements and those of your teammates really inspire us all. And in 2012, I was lucky enough to be on the staff at Royal Holloway in London when it was the Olympic village for rowers and kayakers. And it was just wonderful. It was a wonderful experience, a wonderful, just to see the enthusiasm of everybody. The athletes, all our students who were employed to help and make the thing work. And we were riveted to the television every day, of course. And as I'm sure Katherine is trying to convey, sport is for everyone, however gifted or not we might be. We can all aspire to beat Manchester United. And if we don't, we're still better for having tried. So, Katherine, thank you very much indeed for coming here this evening and for a wonderfully inspiring talk. And the downside is, I mean, we wish you very well for your training session at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. And wish you much success in Rio in 2016, which, of course, is now only next year. So, next week, the Darwin College lectures continue with Professor Richard Ellis from Caltech, who's going to speak on the development of galaxies and take us way back in time to when the universe was young. So, thank you.